Okay, interesting question. Part of our economic study, our board asked us, Spanish Springs, it exists in a number of places. So our board asked us when we were developing these maps to map every GID, SID, LID, any kind of district that already existed to do something. We couldn't map something that didn't exist yet, but those are coming too. What we wanted to make sure is those GIDs are usually set up for a very special purpose, to do a special something. Canyon GIDs set up to provide water and sewer out in Canyon in Story County. You know, there's many of these examples. You mentioned Spanish Springs. What we want to do is our focus is on the big picture, the biggest picture. Many of these GIDs are set up to deal with stormwater that is below a big flood. And that's the more common occurrence. You usually get the 5-year flood, the 10-year, the 20-year. The 100-year or the 1% chance of flooding is only supposed to come sometimes, right? And we've seen it more and more frequently. But we know we just got water. I was just over at the Summit Sierra 2 weeks ago, I believe. We had a pour down. And in a minute, I mean literally, I was walking through channels of water across the Summit parking lot. I could not get to my car. I was flooded out. It's those kind of instant situations. They don't rise to the level of a 100-year flood and a big flood on the Truckee, but it mattered at the parking lot. It mattered out at Toll Road. It matters in Spanish Springs. We've got to have those systems in place to deal with stormwater. And what can I say? We're a little bit behind the 8 ball on that. Many communities have stepped up and formed stormwater utilities, which is really what you're getting at. That's what it would be. It's supposed to be put in place to handle local drainage. We're looking at drainage over thousands of square mile area, and I don't know exactly the size, but I mean,
that's about it. It's about 1,500. Yeah.
1,500 square miles. These GIDs are usually set up over much smaller areas to deal with smaller storms. So 2 different jobs, 2 different probable payments, and I'm sorry the way it is, but that is how it is. You're especially lucky. One of the problems is, and here's the point, the reason I showed the map of I-80 with the Helms Pit and the airport is because I suspect, I mean, you may not fly, you may never use the airport, you may not drive on I-80, but many people in this room do. And it's the benefit that we get from keeping our transportation hub operating. Many people work in Sparks. We made the point earlier, 25,000 jobs. When that area floods, those people, they may not own that business. They can't necessarily, participate in the cleanup, but they can't work either. And often they live somewhere else. So they are affected by the flood even though it's not their building that flooded. It's the same with the home. What many people don't realize is that the National Flood Insurance Program is underwritten by all taxpayers, us in the room, whether we live in a flood zone or not. One of the things that we want to do is reduce those damages so that all of us in America aren't having to pay out flood insurance payments. They're called repetitive claims. We're helping to pay for that, whether you realize it or not. Okay, well, you are very on top of it, but a lot of people don't realize it. They think, well, the people that live in the flood place pay for the insurance and they're the one who benefits. But by reducing the claims, all of us benefit. So the way we perceive it, and the economic studies have shown that these kind of benefits, and there's another gentleman that brought it up, these indirect, I'll call them, because it's not your house and not your business that's being flooded, do affect us, whether we recognize it or not. And that's why it's a community problem. Finally, you live in a higher place. You at Toll Road, but I know some of the people in the room live up on the hills. And I do too. And I don't flood. But what I do is that it rains on my house. And it rains on my driveway, and it rains on my back patio. And all that water runs off into the street. All that street runoff runs off into Steamboat Creek, which all runs off into the Truckee River. I'm high and dry, thinking this is not my problem. But all my water from my property is going down to Flood Sparks, going down to Flood Hidden Valley, backing up to downtown Reno. And so I can sit here and say, why should I be part of this? It's not my problem. Or I can recognize that water, like garbage, has to go somewhere, and we as a community have to deal with it. Anyway, I may sound a little impassioned, but that is how it works as a scientist. And that is one reason we live here. We've got to be part of the solution.